to America. You be a good girl in America, Natalia said. Natalia stood in the doorway, holding me in her arms. It was my last day at the orphanage. I had said goodbye to the other children and the caregivers, and now it was the last farewell. Yes, yes, I promise, I replied. She held me and rocked me back and forth silently. Okay, little Tatyana, it's time to go. Natalia placed me in Tatushka's arms. Thank you so much, Tatushka said to Natalia, for everything. The driver stored my wheelchair and a small bag of clothes that Natalia had given me for my journey into the trunk of the taxi. Tatushka placed me in the back seat and then slipped in beside me. I pulled myself up to the window and reached out to wave. The taxi pulled out onto the street. Natalia followed us, waving and dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief as her glasses slipped down cockeyed on her nose. Natalia, Natalia, I cried. The taxi picked up speed. I pressed my face to the window as Natalia grew smaller and smaller. Then she was gone behind the traffic. I slumped back onto the seat crying. Tatushka pulled me close and held me as I sobbed harder and harder. Now, Tatyana, everything will be okay, she said, trying to comfort me. Looking up, all I could see now were the tops of the gray buildings passing by and the dull evening sky. I had no idea where I was going. I pressed my face into the darkness of Tatushka's coat as she stroked my hair. When I woke, we were pulling into the train station. Tatushka placed me in the wheelchair. I was exhausted from so much crying, but the excitement and activity of the train station distracted me from my sadness. People were rushing everywhere. Porters hurried with bags toward the long, dark trains that billowed out clouds of steam across the station. Moskva Express Trek 22. Moscow Express Train, Track 22. A deep voice blasted out of the loudspeaker. We pressed through the crowd to the Moscow-bound train and boarded. This looks like our compartment here, Tatushka studied our tickets and then checked the numbers on the door. The compartment was small, with two worn leather seats that ran its length, facing each other. She placed me on one of the seats by the window. The porter slid in our luggage in the wheelchair. The cabin was a sleeping car, so the benches folded out into beds. Tatushka opened a bed and placed her luggage on it. Be careful, Tatyana. I pulled myself up to the open window to look out. A whistle sounded. The train lurched back and forward, and then we were off through a cloud of steam into the night. The lights of the city sped by, growing fewer and fewer. Soon, we were passing through the countryside, and I watched the sky grow dark. Bileti pozholujasta. Tickets, please. Tatushka pulled out the tickets and handed them to the conductor, then closed the door and locked it. The rocking of the train made me drowsy. Tatushka placed me on the empty bed and lay down next to me to sleep. Tatushka, what this? America, I asked in the few words of English that I knew. Well, Tatyana, America is a big country with lots of things to do and many people and much food. Most of her words I didn't understand. Occasionally, she said something I recognized, and I'd repeat the word over and over in my head. I drifted into sleep, comforted by her lilting voice and the motion of the train as it rocked and clacked in rhythm to her lullaby of words about America. The next morning, I was no longer sad. A new day was starting. I was no longer in the arms of Tatushka. I was in the arms of my mother. I crawled back to the window and for several hours watched as the fields and forest flew by. Bare trees and roads disappeared into a gray fog. The air smelled of damp smoke. After a while, the fields became dotted with buildings. Then more buildings appeared until the open fields were gone, replaced with row after row of dark buildings. More buildings than I had ever seen before stretched as far as I could see. The sun was coming up over the rooftops. We pulled into the station, and the train lurched to a stop. My mother piled our luggage on the wheelchair and picked me up in her arms. On the train platform, someone was waving at us. Dobroye, utro, good morning. A young Russian couple approached us, waving and smiling. Hello. Mom greeted them and turned to me. Tatyana, this is Masha and Pasha. They will be helping us while we are here in Moscow. I had not met many young men before. Pasha looked so serious until his face lit up with a big smile. Welcome, little one, Pasha said cheerfully as he stooped over to shake my hand. Masha looked like an angel. Her eyes twinkled like stars, and her skin was as pale as Natalia's porcelain teacups. My mom chatted and laughed with Masha and Pasha as they led us to a small black sedan parked at the front of the train station. The fog lifted as we drove through the streets of Moscow. The darkened structures I had seen from the train were now coming alive with activity, and the sidewalks began to fill with people. Our car pulled up to a large building. Pasha lifted me out and carried me down the long red carpet stretching from the sidewalk to the front door. Inside, the bright lights inside hurt my eyes. When I focused, I could see large white marble columns capped by tall golden lamps. The walls and ceilings sparkled and glittered. I had been carried into a new world. Is this America? I asked. Pasha laughed. No, little one. This is Moscow, he said proudly. After we had checked into the hotel, we spent the rest of the morning visiting various government offices, getting all the proper paperwork so I could leave Russia. As we went through the streets of Moscow, people stared at me. I don't think they had ever seen a little girl in a wheelchair. Most children like me were kept in hospitals and homes and didn't go outside often. I suppose they thought we were tourists because we were all smiles and giggles, while everyone else looked so serious and grim. There was so much to see: ice cream vendors and streetcars full of flowers and candy. A man was playing a balyaka, which is sort of like a Russian banjo. Pasha placed something in the hat on the ground in front of him. The musician smiled and nodded at us. You see, little one, these are rubles, Russian money. I gave the man some rubles, so he'll play a song for us. I had never seen money before, and I had never heard such beautiful music. Then, from another man, Pasha traded his rubles for a balloon for me. I could go on and on about all the things that we did. And that one afternoon, I had my first taste of ice cream, soda pop, and chocolate. We explored store after store selling things I had never imagined. One sold all sorts of small curios: snow globes with tiny scenes of Moscow, carved wooden animals, china figurines, colorful scarves, glass paperweights, gilded framed portraits of important looking people. Then my mother found a shelf of small wooden dolls. Open it up, she said, handing one of the dolls to me. I sat and stared at the pretty doll, painted in red and gold to look like a Russian babushka. Masha reached out and neatly twisted off the top of the doll. Inside was another doll. Laughing at my surprise, she pulled out the second one. Then she twisted the top off that doll, and inside was another doll, and then another, until there were 5 dolls in all. I laughed with delight at the dolls spread out on my lap, twisting the smallest and hoping for yet another one inside. Mom went back into the store to get several more. No, no, one is enough, I said, not knowing what I would do with so many dolls. No, these are gifts for your new family in America, Mom replied. My new family? I was just getting used to the idea of my new mom. It was a gift I could barely imagine. The next morning, my mother and I said goodbye to Masha and Pasha, and we boarded an airplane to America. Pasha had explained to me how the plane flies through the sky and would take us across a big ocean to America and my new home. Flying in a plane, the ocean, America. I didn't understand exactly what any of these words meant, except that it was another new experience. Mom placed me in my seat on the plane, buckled me in, and tucked a blanket around me. Now, Tatyana, you go to sleep. We have a long journey ahead of us, she whispered to me, trying to calm me down, but I was excited and restless. I was beginning to like adventures. After the plane took off, I slipped out of my seat to explore the cabin. Scooting up and down the aisles again and again, introducing myself to the flight attendants who gave me cookies and soda, and the passengers who eyed me and smiled as I passed by their seats. Finally, exhausted from all my explorations, I returned to my seat and fell asleep. As the sun came up, I scrambled onto my mother's lap and gazed out at the clouds, the far curved horizon of the earth and the dark blue ocean below. Up until that moment, all that I had ever known of the world was what I could see through the iron gates of the orphanage in St. Petersburg. Now, the more I saw, the bigger the world became.